I need one. Oh, after today. Oh, this is so nice. Had a shit day.
That hand on my shoulder, that reassurance was what really got me through. And being there, his presence, I don't know how I would have got through it otherwise all that time.
So my name's Magella Green and I'm the founder of Gorilla Hugs. And Gorilla Hugs is a little group of people anyone can join and we go to various locations for up to an hour at a time and offer free hugs to people who are walking past or may want a hug. And we do it because it's about promoting platonic touch in everyday life and connection and increasing wellness and happiness. And I know that that makes a positive difference to people.
Hug me! Made my day.
What made you decide to start up the Gorilla Hugs?
Well, I was studying positive psychology at the time, and one thing that struck me was all across positive psychology was that there was nothing about touch, and I knew from my social work background and education that babies would die or fail to thrive as a result of not having touch in the early babyhood, and it made me wonder, how could you have a flourishing life? How could you be happy throughout life and really have your optimum health if you didn't have touch in your life?
When I had my accident, the driver of the other car lost control of his vehicle and cut the corner and smashed headlong into me at speed. So it was a dreadful accident, and I was spun, the car was spun over, and I ended up in the ditch, hanging upside down, and I had to wait for several hours for the emergency services to come.
My name is Denise Chafee and I'm 56 years old, and I retired last year, and I worked as a nurse for 36 years. People, and when I say people, I'm relating it to patients, that when they are in a very distressed state, when they first come into hospital, particularly if they are in a degree of pain, one of the ways of reassuring people is just by touching their, using your hand and touching them on their forearm, and people do find that's reassuring. And I have seen people settle down and just feel calmer with human touch.
While I was in there, trapped in there, a man got in the car with me. I couldn't see him because he got in the back behind me somehow, and I was absolutely terrified at this point because what I thought was smoke was coming through the car, and I thought the car was going to catch on fire. I already thought I was going to die from the accident, and I sort of got through that, and then I thought this car was going to catch on fire, and I was terrified. And this guy got in, and he held my shoulder, and I told him to get out because I thought the car was going to catch on fire. But he reassured me that he wouldn't get into a car that was going to catch fire, and it was all going to be all right. And he just calmed me down and got me through that whole episode until the emergency services arrived. And that hand on my shoulder, that reassurance was what really got me through, and him just talking to me and being there. His presence, I don't know how I would have got through it otherwise all that time.
I've always thought that touch was extremely important in developing a rapport with your patient. And I think, although people are scared of touch sometimes, I think when they are ill and vulnerable, touch is very reassuring to them as an individual.
When I was in hospital, I was really badly injured. I was on traction and had badly broken legs, to the point where the surgeons thought they were going to have to amputate both my legs. And I had internal injuries where I was being sick and everything. It sounds horrific, and it actually was. and I couldn't be bothered or to speak to anybody or to see anybody or to do anything. All I wanted was somebody familiar there, someone who would keep me safe. And the best way I've found that my husband and my brother that came to visit me every day was that just by the fact that they could hold my arm or hold my hand. Well, they couldn't really hold my hand because I had so many wires and drips and things in my hands and needles and stuff, tubes. So they would just stroke my arm or my, sounds a bit cliche, or stroke my forehead or put a damp cloth on there. And sometimes they would rub my feet, which was very reassuring actually. But I couldn't talk about what was happening and I couldn't ask about anything. And I dreaded people coming in to see me and having to speak about stuff, really. And really, just them being there and holding me was the most reassuring thing. Sometimes I wanted just to have my husband climb into bed and hold me, but of course that was impossible because of all the stuff and the traction and everything. And I hated it when they went. I just wanted that touch.
Hugs promotes kind of oxytocin promotion, serotonin, and so it actually has a physiological impact on your well-being as well.
And you can see that from people when you've been doing the free hugs. Is that, what's the usual reaction from people when you've given them a hug?
You've got, depends on who different people. Some people come and go, oh, it's quite funny, and they're a bit awkward, and a lot of people are quite suspicious. And are you affiliated to something? Are you raising money? No, it's free. That's what you do it for, and curious about it. And then you get people who, don't receive touch and feel quite touch deprived. And that happens every time we do it. There is at least a handful of people who will say, thank you, I really needed that. Or as we had yesterday, that man who just burst into tears as soon as he was held. And it was just like really moving. He didn't need to speak about it. And, from the research that I've done, I know that touch communicates more than you can communicate verbally. And we had a guy who was in Newcastle under Lyme who was hugged by one of my colleagues' friends, and she was really moved by him because he was an older man, and he stood there talking to her for about 20 minutes afterwards and had said to her, basically, I haven't had a hug for 14 years since my wife died. So it looks like it's all really good fun, and it is really good fun, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more about developing connections with people, and people are more likely to go away and be kinder to other people. So it has a pay it forward effect, and it has it's like throwing a stone in a pond, and the ripple effect is great because even the people that don't come up and get hugs will walk past and smile, and you can see the changes in the environment that you're actually in.
When I started to get better, I could hear other people in the ward, old people, who were very distressed and calling out. And it was very distressing. And when I was able to get into a wheelchair, I would go and see them, and I would hold their hand and talk to them. And I found that this calmed them down quite a lot. And I think it was helpful for the nurses and the other patients as well, because they stopped, calling out and being so distressed. And I knew how valuable that was, that holding of the hand to, help them.
And it's been quite recognised that hospital staff are getting busier, and that's doctors and nurses, and although they have time to do the physical caring of a patient that is dying and also looking after their family, it's very well recognised that what's sadly lacking is the emotional support for the patient and for the family in a very distressing stage.
I know that when I was in hospital for all that time, that the nurses were very busy, and they had all the practical stuff to do all the time. They never had, some of them would make time, but it was generally the people that probably needed it most, the old people, the people that didn't have visitors, the people that didn't have people to come in and look after them and hold their hand or anything. Those people that were on their own, I felt, needed more attention, and not just practical attention, but helping them eat and sitting them up and helping them to drink and just being there with them and talking to them and holding their hand or what have you. I just felt like everything could be quite perfunctory if not careful.
I'm what is described as a companion volunteer. The Marie Curie Trust have devised a pilot scheme where 16 volunteers have been gone through a degree of training around like bereavement and how what happens when a patient dies, and to be able to give support in the last couple of days of someone's life, to give support to the patient and or their family. Often it's when someone's asleep, they don't wish to be alone, let's sit in a room, and just having that knowledge that somebody's there in the same room as them, but also by having that person just hold their hand, that they actually find that very reassuring. So we are there, that's it. We will be, the scheme has just started, so it's very early days, but the volunteers will be there at the final moments of someone's life, and part of that is actually just being there talking to the patient, and that patient may not be able to respond, but just holding their hands so that they know that another human being is with them during those very final moments of life.
I remember one night, and I'd just come off of morphine. I'd been 3 weeks on patient-controlled morphine, and which is quite a long time. And they gave me another drug, and I don't know what it was, but it made me feel terrible, and I must have hallucinated or what have you. I just felt awful. And there was a wonderful night nurse. She was an agency nurse. She was dressed all in white, and she came down the ward to me when I rang the bell, and she was a bit like, she reminded me of an angel, and she just held my hand because I didn't have so many tubes in then, and she stayed with me and talked and just stayed with me. She even rang the bell to get the nursing assistant to come so she wouldn't have to leave me, and sorted me out, and she stayed with me till I went back to sleep again, and her presence and her kindness and touch got me through that awful time.
What are you kind of hoping will happen with the free hug, or the kind of movement of well-being and things like that? What do you hope for the future?
Well, not only am I a positive psychologist, but I'm a social worker, and I've worked with adults for a long time and in adult services, and again, and I have a special interest in policy development and strategic change. I would like to see the implementation of touch that's more than just moving an old person from their bed to a chair, that there's actually, again, opportunities that people feel physically connected, because I can't see any rationale behind not receiving touch throughout your entire lifespan?
Well, when I was growing up, I grew up in a normal, loving family, where we had rough and tumble and we had lots of cuddles, and I used to sit on my mum and dad's lap and they'd snuggle us in and everything. And I think that all that sort of thing is so important, and I think that clinicalness of when you're in hospital, to not be held and not be touched is, at the times when you're most vulnerable, is awful for people. Well, at least that's what I experienced.
And what happens is people in institutions, in hospitals, in care homes, and even in their own home are receiving less and less touch. So even with they might be online, they might be able to do their shopping and get it delivered, but they are, back in the day you'd have home care workers who would come in, do the shopping, have a cup of tea and a chat, but because of the way budgets are and services are, less and less time for people is made. So I'd like to see political change that actually is about really looking after people's well-being.
I think we probably are going away from it because of the world that we find ourselves in, that I don't think we're getting a less caring society, but I think people are very much aware that that there are certain things that some people may find distasteful, and sadly touch is one of those, and I think it's the most natural thing in the world, an appropriate touch, and you were describing it as a comfort touch, and I think that's an excellent way of thinking about it. It's a comfort touch to make somebody feel that somebody else cares about them.
The fear around the culture of abuse that has been built up in the UK, there's a real concern that actually what we're doing is neglecting the children who need more, who need connect. They're not having any of those connections made. So for older people, even receiving a little touch on the arm when it is actually a form of prevention for falls. So it reduces the number of falls in older people. They'll actually consume more calories at meal times if someone touches them while they're eating. Really simple things that will make a difference.
Health care workers, whichever environment they work in, should be made aware of the importance of touch and how it can make a patient feel as better or as relaxed without having to use medication. I do feel that somebody touching you and just saying everything's going to be all right can be as effective as just giving a pill to relieve somebody's anxiety. I'm not saying that pills shouldn't be used, but I just think touch should be used more, and we should be encouraged to use it, but also to not to be frightened to use it, because I think a lot of people in the healthcare profession are frightened of touching somebody in case that individual reacts badly to them.
Some of the nicest things that happen to me are times when I just go and I see my little nephews that are 6 and 7 and 8, and they just run out and give me a big hug and a cuddle. Or my children come home from being away and they give me a big hug, and friends when they come in, and those are the best of times, and that's touch at its most positive and lovely.